This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello world, it's me, Dennis, and welcome to another Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. My guest today is Benj Edwards, writer, tech historian, and futurist. Ben has written for Fast Company, The Atlantic, Mac and PCWorld, and with the speed of today's technological changes, that includes everything AI. I wanted to get his perspectives on it all, so here is part one of our conversation. Good morning, Benj. What a pleasure to have you on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
My question is this. Because you are a historian, and I want to talk about that from first, but when did you first start loving history? What was your context for it when you began to say, this is fascinating how we got here?
Yeah, that's a question. I'm not sure where it came from because my parents were not historians, and they, I feel like I know that I wanted to preserve tech history from an early age. I feel like I've tried to go back into my mind of like when I was 11 or 12 years old when I first started.
What year was that?
That's 92, maybe.
Okay, so this is the start. This is the start of the beginning of the internet. DARPA had already made its inroads. We were starting at that time, right?
Yeah, well, the internet had been around for a while, but it had been mostly an academic and military thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started running a BBS, which is a bulletin board system. Which is a piece of software where anyone could call in with their modem on their computer and leave messages and play text-based games, download files, and then the next person would call and see the messages the last person left and download some files or upload some files. And it was sort of like a one-on-one kind of little internet thing, and they weren't really networked together very much. And I started that when I was 11 years old, and I just wrote an article about it on Ars Technica because that was 30 years ago now, when I started in November of 92. And, around that time, I think I grew up with a lot of different types of personal computers because my dad was very ADD about he wanted to experience some new things all the time. He traded out his cars all the time. He always had one or two cars, and he'd buy them and sell them and buy them and sell them. And looking back, we also had a lot of different types of computers. We had the, Apple II, an Atari that's sitting behind me. That's our original family Atari 800, I think, from they got when I was born in 81 from my older brother. And then we had Atari ST and Mac, IBM PCs and different things, a little bit of everything. So I was exposed to all of that when I was a kid. And then I also was exposed to a lot of older games. Like we played that Atari for a long time after it was considered obsolete. And I wondered why the other kids in the neighborhood didn't know what Atari was anymore. And they didn't play those kind of games, And so I was thinking, wow, I don't know what it was. Something inside me said, this is going to be lost if someone doesn't remember this and preserve it. And I remember also thinking, I look back at the age of those PCs. Maybe it started as a collection thing. I know my dad collected cameras, and he had vintage cameras, and he'd go to flea markets and find them and buy them for fun and fix them up and use them. And I thought maybe I need my own thing. So I started collecting computers, and then I guess I realized once I had all these different computers, like I saw, well, they looked so interesting in the late 70s and early 80s, but now they're all beige PCs. They're just metal boxes, and people are throwing these out, and someone needs to preserve that era because it'll be forgotten otherwise. And I don't know why I had that thought, but I did. And I thought, I'll start the world's first computer museum, when I was, 11, 12 years old, something like that. And it turns out there had already been, I think the Boston Computer Museum had started. That was the world's first, as far as I know. That became the Computer History Museum in Mountain View today. And so I never started a museum, but I don't know. There must be. I'm a strong believer in a lot of genetic predispositions to behavior. I know that there's a lot of there's a lot of experience built into it, but I've picked up some genes from some ancestors that were historically conscious. And I've also been always really good for some reason at dates and timelines, like remembering dates things happened. And I'm not any kind of savant in any fashion or anything, or even good with numbers, but like putting things in the context of a timeline is something I've always been good at. I don't know why. So
I love the idea of context, because I
yeah.
don't think we can take anything historically and say it exists outside of what was going on at that time. And
Mhm.
that's where I see the computer age. I mean, as we're going on, I'm seeing an acceleration that I have that as I try to look back into history of our species, it appears to me is that we've suddenly gone to an acceleration of change, that delta that
Mhm.
we've never experienced before. And I see it as that, as the computer being the accelerant there.
Yeah, one of the fascinating things, I don't know if you've heard of Ray Kurzweil. He's an inventor,
Mm,
and
tell me.
he invented the reading machine for the blind and some of the first text to speech synthesizers and a really good multi-timbral piano synthesizer and things like that in the 70s and 80s. And he's also a futurist now, and he's written books called The Age of Spiritual Machines in '99
Mhm,
and The Singularity is Near in 2005.
mhm.
And I read the book Age of Spiritual Machines in '99. I was 18 years old. I had already had some ideas like, wow, what if you could simulate a brain in a computer or something? Then you could live forever or upload your brain or something, And then I read his book and it talks about things like that. I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And his biggest contribution to me um, is that to my knowledge, he discovered this trend of acceleration in technology that he has these charts and graphs where he thinks it goes back to basically the beginning of the universe with all these things, complexity building up and stuff. And he has other charts that say, the invention of technology, the period between inventions, significant inventions, is exponentially getting shorter. And computers are just a part of that, um, and I believe that. I think that's what's going on. We're in the kind of computer phase. I think the next phase will be some kind of like something built on top of computers, like AI, powered stuff. And yeah, so what the thing about exponentials is they're very slow for a long time, and then you hit the knee of the curve, and it's like, whoa, what is this? It's like it came out of nowhere, But people who have been paying attention to it have known for a long time that it's coming because they're into it. So um, that's what you're seeing, the knee of the curve.
I think of like the smartphone. I mean, has there ever been any technology that was adapted faster from the time it was introduced to the time it's now? I mean, people are and people in Africa are using their phones to find water to use solutions. It's an extraordinary. I feel like that the economy, the world economy, before we hit this inflation piece, which has a lot of complexities to it, but was built upon, I believe, people going from $1 a day to $2 a day to $4 a day. So there was this global piece that went right along with the adoption of the smartphone and all the computer that is inside each one of these, because this is a computer.
Yeah, it is. And I consider our smartphones honestly as sort of like a bionic extension of ourselves, or like we're sort of cyborgs now and we don't realize it because we've extended our capacity to recall information and knowledge, and we offload a lot of that into these devices like our memory, notes, and taking pictures for memory's sake and writing things. And so I feel like I'm augmented already. It's just not attached to your physical body like we've always predicted, in the past. I don't know if that when or if that sort of thing will happen, but right now we're already cyborgs basically because that it's just, I talk to my wife a lot about these types of technologies coming up and how they seem kind of scary, and we want to sort of back away from them. But what happens, in my opinion, is that they're all, economic drivers, kind of like what you're saying. They increase efficiency, they increase productivity, and to compete, you have to adopt the technology too. So that's why no one can get by basically without a smartphone now in the modern world. You have to be some kind of different, I don't know what you are, basket weaver that just sits, and maybe you're fine. You don't make a lot of money, that's fine. You don't use a smartphone, but even it's touched every sort of realm of life on Earth because it's such an essential thing. And I feel like, new technologies like AI will, they're accelerating human productivity again in a very dramatic way. And even if people don't like it, we have to go along with it because it makes so much money for somebody. It's going to accelerate their business. They're not going to let one person use this. Everybody's going to need to use it. And so there we are in a whole new mess again, some dramatic new technology. And it's accelerating so fast that it is like a whiplash. I don't know, like there's some potentially destabilizing effects on society because of that. And so we just have to live through it. I don't know what else to do.
Exactly. And that's what I want to talk about, because one of the things that you wrote, one of your sentences that keeps running through my mind is, the death of history and the breakdown of trust threatens the continuity of civilization itself. But most people are still afraid to talk in such terms, and it's time to start that conversation.
Yeah. That's a powerful sentence. I like that guy, that writer. That is, I think that was that from the Fast Company article about the risk of deep fakes influencing history and changing it. And I still think something like that is going to happen. I think that I have, that thing, I wrote that in 2020 before a lot of this stuff is hitting. So it's making me look like some kind of weird genius, but these things were, to me, obvious at that time. In fact, years before that idea, I had that article, I pitched it to the Atlantic in 2016, and they said, what's going on? I don't see this. I don't see any of this happening. I was like, well, it is going to happen. But there were no examples to show. So I said, I have to sit on this and wait until something comes along that is obvious. And at that time, I think it was just the video deepfakes had come out. But if you read the article, it's not just about video deepfakes. I talk about generating every type of media, still images, text, websites, other types of things. And now people, just this week with the chat GPT thing, it's an AI chatbot released by OpenAI based on the GPT-3 large language model. And it's freaking people out right now because it can generate a lot of really convincing and interesting information and text. And it could be used to make, like you slap some image generators on that and make it, put it into a template for a website, and it could just turn out fake websites that look like real ones, with very convincing information. And anyone not educated enough to know the difference, which would be everyone, because no one knows everything, could believe it. And so we're on the verge of constructing a lot of parallel realities, I think, like parallel media realities that are not necessarily based in what we would consider factual events, to the extent that I've come to think that maybe we'll get by because we already sort of do that in a way. We already have parallel media landscapes, like with the different political parties, for example. we have, every culture has their own history, narrative. Like if you go to Brazil, I think they think someone invented flight first. We in North Carolina, we say it's the Wright brothers. And that's an example of, you know, the context of how history is interpreted by each culture is already different. We've already constructed parallel media realities for ourselves, but they're sort of like big enough to hold millions of people. And I feel like that's shrinking down into like atomizing into individual realities that are, you know, you can live in your own little bubble, constructed, whatever. And, you know, to the extent that you need to interact with other people in their own bubbles, I think money will be that. Like, I don't know, you know, how we'll still need some common infrastructure. And it's so hard to know what's going to happen. It's potentially terrifying, and maybe, you know, what I said in that is, you know, that's become more apparent to me is what I called historical context attacks. And that is when, you know, someone will use AI not just to fake something that you already know, but construct an entire reality to support an ideology. So yes, let's say there's like an extremist group, it doesn't matter what they support. They will be able to generate a corpus of historical texts in every language or whatever that just supports this idea that you look and they say, look at all these texts. This is a 1,000-year-old idea. It was written by the Babylonians. Look at it in this tablet, you know, but who has that tablet? There's one in the whole world. If there were a real one in a museum, who can examine that? We all depend on that media reality coming in to know, to build this shared culture. That's where the trust comes in, right? I don't have that tablet. You know, I don't have the Rosetta Stone. Is it real? I don't know. You know, but we trust people to tell us it is. So if someone else comes in with this fake stuff, they make their own artifacts, they make their own whatever, they make their own texts and videos. You have a lot of, I don't know, it seems like a recipe for trouble to me.
Oh, I completely agree that it is a recipe for incredible turning everything over. How it's going to look, I have no clue. How do we rebuild or build trust in this kind of reality? That to me is an astounding question. You know, I see all these, you know, I see Henry Kissinger and people getting together and saying, you know, we have to make sure that we put rules on AI, and we put, it seems to me, and maybe you can help me with this, is that the genie is already out of the bottle. That AI is, however it is, or whatever malevolent that could be out there, it's already gone out into the wild. This idea of created it into a box that has no connection to it, so that you can, it doesn't seem to me, especially with all the open source, that it's done it. We'll never know that moment when it crosses or has crossed.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. One is that, you know, right now we still don't have some kind of autonomous AI that's like a human level intelligence that could just go do whatever it wants, you know, thankfully, because that's pretty scary. That's called AGI, artificial general intelligence. And AI is a very blanket generic term that could mean many things, but it's always been an aspirational term that means it changes based on what we've done. And it means whatever we think only humans can do, now a machine can do it. That's AI. And then once that's done, it doesn't become AI anymore, and we put it away. There's been a lot of that going on. First, it was checkers solving machines, and then it could do this. Then it could sort things and read text. And, you know, that was all AI at one point. Now we're in the phase of deep learning AI, which is, you know, it absorbs a whole bunch of text or images or music or whatever, and extracts knowledge from it and can generate new things from it. That's sort of like the kind of what people usually call AI right now, even though it can mean a lot of things. And so AGI is a step above. That's like a human level intelligence that can do anything a human could do, or beyond human level intelligence, which is likely if that actually happens. So yeah, I think that what really drives the adoption of these things is economics, like I told you. And some people have argued, including me years ago, that the real AI is basically the free market economy that wants the output is dollars, the input is productivity, and it's maximizing for dollars. And it's a rule-based system. It's like a program, but it runs on people. We're like the hardware that makes it run because it's a set of rules. And that rule system is craving more productivity all the time. And right now, I mean, our current government is not really holding it back. It's sort of been unregulated in America, relatively speaking. Sure, there's some. But this AI comes along and it's like, okay, you can make more dollars with this AI. It's going to be everywhere because of that. And I think humans will proliferate that. And so, yeah, it's out of the bottle and you can't stop it because the dollar is almighty in America. And that's what's going to speak here in this culture. I can't speak for other cultures. There are other countries that, have much more regulation and, less free market sort of ideologies than America. And, I don't know how that's going to play out, America versus other countries. There's going to be an economic race between, China and America to adopt these types of things. And Europe may be just sitting by and like, what's going on with these weirdos? I don't know.
There is something about I was born in Mexico and I came here when and was naturalized when I was 6. And I'm glad to be here with all our problems, with all our challenges. Of course, you have to understand I am white male problems, which are different from white male upper middle class problems that I have had over the course of my life, which I realize are different problems than others. But the challenge that I'm thinking about in the United States is that there is a within this capitalistic free market system, which I mean, I like my capitalism with some fetters. I prefer them to be, there needs to be a referee calling, saying, okay, well, no, I'm sorry, holding back others. Let's do that. However, I believe that there's something about the freedom of thought, the idea, the innovation piece that I feel that it's still in the United States. It still has that out there. What's your thought as a historian on that?
I mean, it's obvious that there's something about America that is very, very capitalistic, very money related, profit and companies and things. And I know that I've read, I can't say of any exact things, but I remember reading some sort of historical accounts of people visiting America and saying, wow, they're all about business here. It's a completely different thing. And like, I think we weren't born with a set of like ancient ideals that were passed down for thousands of years, like Europeans who have monarchies, historical monarchies and things like that, and religions as their sort of like, that was like their basis of their culture that was passed down for so long. And everybody came to America as mixed, and we have a constitution. We sort of worship the Constitution, and we sort of we don't have that basis of like, okay, our culture is based around valuing history or valuing family or something. Well, we really value money and productivity as like, I guess, immigrants and hardworking people who pull themselves up by their bootstraps because we all had to come here and, survive in the wilderness and whatever. That's our story, So I think a lot of that comes from there. And I also think, I consider myself a capitalist to the extent that I believe it creates a lot of advantages, quality of life stuff. It's made everything in this room. And I love that stuff. But obviously, I think it's like a beast that needs to be kept in its cage or it devours everything. And we've already been through that cycle in the Gilded Age in the 1890s with the Industrial Revolution allowed so much productivity that so much wealth was concentrated in so few hands that it really wrecked a lot of things, and it made life miserable for a lot of people who are dredging in factories all day long and stuff. And we are on the verge of another industrial revolution with this AI stuff. And I call it that. It's like, instead of physical labor, we already have the physical manual labor stuff worked out with machines that can mass produce things. But this is like mass producing creative labor instead. So you're accelerating creative ideas, intellectual ideas, information, and you can do that at a mass scale. And it's crazy, but it makes it, it will be another productivity boost of the same kind. We've already concentrated a lot of wealth into people with the smartphone and the internet in a way that probably needs to be regulated and pulled back, and social media and stuff. And it was like another oil boom, another industry boom with titans. Now they're data titans. They collect everyone's data, they broker it and whatever. That needs to be, like, honestly, or it's very destructive if we don't start pulling that back. But we're also like seeing that was like a wave, and now we've got another wave on top of this, which is the AI stuff. So whoever can control the narrative of who generates this reality for everyone when they ask questions for some kind of AI bot or whatever and want responses. I mean, there's never been a more powerful human being on Earth than someone who could control that like thing, So we're in interesting times.
So please tune in for part 2 of this conversation with Benj Edwards on YouTube, Tardon Media, or on the Tardon Media Network website. See you soon.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.